Please share the information provided in this video. Always remember that a crucial part of removing a person's confusion is understanding his or her unique source of it. Now, this is a response to Blogrich55. He made a response to me, and so this is my first really response to him. I don't remember the exact title of his name, but it was basically, he was saying that I misunderstood Calvinism, and he was making a biblical response. Now, I'm not going to deal with absolutely everything that in my original video or in his response video, or your response video, because I'm sure you'll be watching this. Rather, I just want to focus on what I feel is the first point that needs to be addressed, and that is, basic epistemology. If somebody out there watching this video may not know that word, that just means how we know what we know. A theory of knowledge and how humans could possibly have knowledge. And more specifically in this case, it has to deal with presuppositionalism. And what I'm going to do is say what I think your presuppositional viewpoint is, and then respond to it, or just basically raise a question about it for you to answer. But the question would be irrelevant if I haven't correctly identified your view. So let's just put this up on the screen. Alright, there it is, and it says, this is what I think your view is. I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I think it is. Man's judgment is not trustworthy. 1, okay. 2, if one simply trusts God's word, the Bible, then he or she does not need to make use of man's judgment. 3, therefore one should simply trust God's word. Okay? And so the issue is, if you're out there and someone's, questions you and says like, well, how do you know God's word is true? You would say, you're assuming that you can trust your reason. You're presupposing that. And I'm simply presupposing that, I trust my judgment. So, in other words, the relevant point was when I was making moral assessments about God or something like that. So, the question I want to ask, again, let's just repeat the point of view, and then I'll ask the question about it. It says, man's judgment is not trustworthy. If one simply must trust God's word, the Bible, then he or she does not need to make use of man's judgment. Therefore, one should simply trust God's word, or the Bible. Now, this is especially relevant in the issue of man's moral judgment about an issue. Pretty much any issue, but more importantly, God. Because, the idea is, how could you make a moral assessment of God, or even a particular idea or concept of God? Because ultimately you're making a moral assessment of what you think the real God is, or is not. And so it's the same idea. Man's judgment is not trustworthy. If one simply trusts God's word, the Bible, then he or she does not need to make use of man's judgment. Therefore, one should simply trust God's word. This is my question. This is my response. How does a person tell what is God's word and what is man's judgment? How does a person tell what is God's word and what is man's judgment? How do you tell which is which? How do you recognize them? How do you tell the difference? How do you rightly divide the difference and identify which is which? That's my question. How does a person tell what is God's word and what is man's judgment? Thank you for your time. I also wanted to say thanks for being willing to discuss this, and I don't know how long we can keep talking about it, because I'm sure you have other things to do, but I'm game, and peace and grace to you, and these are important things to talk about, and I'm glad you want to talk about them as fellow Christian brothers. So keep up the good work, and keep up the good pursuit of really trying to really know God. It's a good thing. Thanks, bye.